just as we were wrapping up cutting, the wind really picked up, so the wind noise was out of control. But Melvin and I got talking just a little bit about how this sawmill differs from my sawmill. Now, they're built on the same frame, that's why they look so similar. But this one doesn't have all the features that I ended up going for on my machine. As I mentioned, and as you probably saw in the video, this has a 35 horsepower gas engine. It also has rollers, and that allows you to move the cant left and right, but those rollers are not powered. Now, they're powered, meaning you can raise and lower them, but they're not going to provide you that option to roll the cant or roll the log left and right lengthwise down the mill. This sawmill also doesn't have the board drag back fingers, and so that kind of determines where the operator station is. As you'll notice on this machine, the operator station is right in the middle. That would not be possible if you had those drag back board fingers, because the board would go right where you're standing. And likewise, you'll also notice with this sawmill, there's not that board dampener, those extra chains that hang down at the back of the engine. That would be there on my machine because I have those drag back fingers. As I said before, this is a 35 horsepower gas engine. My machine, I have a 37 horsepower diesel. With this machine, you may notice that piston pump there, the hydraulic pump, is not on the same side of the engine as the clutch and the belt. It's on the opposite side. Melvin went on to tell me that he likes it on this side because if you ever have to change a belt, you don't have to worry about fiddling around with the position of the pump at all. He also mentioned to me it is a piston pump, and when you start this thing, there's a little valve that you can close so that when you're trying to start the engine, it's not trying to pump all that hydraulic fluid at the same time. You more or less start the engine. Once the engine is running, then you open the valve, and that starts the flow of hydraulic fluid with that pump. This unit here also cuts, just like mine, standard width, 38-inch log, and then just over 20 feet length. You can get different widths here as well, 28, 38, 48 is the sizes, but being the standard size, 38 is what you see. You may notice with this model, there's also no debarker, and that doesn't mean you can't add a debarker in the future. They've actually ran lines so that you just have to connect to them and put the actual piece of tubular steel in that holds the debarker if you wanted to go ahead and add it down the road. And you'll also notice that there's no things like, there's no laser as well. Although the controls look similar to mine, some features aren't there. And that's just because this model is like the bone stock model. And you can add features as you so choose. We chatted a little bit about who this mill might be best for, and Melvin was mentioning that this mill is for the person who wants a fully hydraulic sawmill, but who doesn't want all the bells and whistles that would drive the price up. And so just like my sawmill, the hydraulics are all driven off that piston pump that runs off the engine, and there's a clutch that drives a drive belt, which turns the band wheels, which turns the blades. Now those band wheels, just like mine, 26 inches, they are beltless. So this is like model 338 sawmill with the log loader, which makes it the 350-38 model. Not the 350-38 XP model, which has some more bells and whistles on it, more features. And because of that, this thing is less expensive than that 350-38 XP model. There's no belt on them. It's steel on steel. The blade is 2 inches wide, and it's also got the hydraulic blade tensioner. On the band wheels, there's a shaft, and the shaft has the roller taper bearings, just like mine does. And it's also using diesel as a drip, and that's the lubrication. You also still have those roller guides, and they're applying the down pressure on the blade, and then attached to the one roller guide is the guide arm, and that goes in and out depending on the width you're looking to cut, and that's controlled at that control station with one of those hydraulic levers.